What happens when you escape war only to find that its echoes follow you across oceans? Displacement isn't just about leaving a place behind. It's about carrying the weight of trauma, fear, and uncertainty into an unfamiliar world. For refugees, the journey doesn't end when they arrive in a new country. It's just the beginning of learning how to survive in a place that feels anything but like home. For the past few weeks, we've been hearing a bizarre narrative circulating about immigrants supposedly causing a pet shortage by eating people's pets. As it turns out, this story was fabricated for political reasons, a tactic meant to stir up fear and division. When I first heard it, I couldn't help but ask myself, do the people pushing this narrative even understand the real struggles immigrants face when they arrive in this country? That question led me to create this video. I want to offer a glimpse into the reality of life as a newly arrived immigrant. What's like to navigate a new world, carry the trauma of displacement, and face countless challenges. Maybe some people won't care about my story, but it's still worth sharing. My hope is that by shedding light on these experiences, we can replace fear with understanding and move beyond harmful stereotypes. Let me share a personal story. I arrived in the United States for the first time toward the end of November of 2003, just in time to celebrate Thanksgiving and Christmas. For a while, there was a sense of relief, even excitement. I had made it out of harm's way, and I was in America, the land of opportunity, the land of 50 Cents, of Snoop Dogg, of Eminem, and Beyonce. For a teenage boy from Africa, that is a dream come true. It's like waking up in heaven, walking on those golden streets we hear about. But on Christmas Eve that year, my perception of this new life shifted. That night, fireworks filled the sky. For many, fireworks are a symbol of celebration, but for me, they triggered memories of the war I had just escaped. Every burst felt like a bomb. Each crackle brought back the fear and chaos of the battlefield. In that moment, I wasn't in America. I was back in the war zone, where survival was the only thing that mattered. The trauma I carried colored everything about my new life. At first, the excitement of being safe in a new country lasted about 2 weeks, especially while my family and I stayed with my sister, who had helped us resettle. She was our anchor during those early days, but the honeymoon period came to an abrupt end when we moved into our own apartment. Suddenly, we had to figure out how to live in a completely foreign world. We had to learn how to use the bus, how to communicate our needs in a language we barely understood, how to find familiar foods, and how to find work. I remember how my brothers and I used to struggle just to cross the streets when we first arrived. Where we came from, there were no street lights, and cars didn't stop for pedestrians. As a pedestrian, you didn't wait for cars to stop because you knew it would never happen. You either had to dash between moving cars or wait for a bigger crowd to cross with you. But here, things were different. The streets were empty, no crowd of people walking, and there were these colored lights at intersections, but we had no idea what each color meant. We would stand at a stoplight for a few seconds, confused, and then decided to run through the intersection, assuming that that's just how it worked. Cars would honk at us, and we couldn't understand why. It was until after many embarrassing and nerve-wracking moments that we finally learned how traffic lights worked. Red meant stop, green meant go. It was simple, but in the beginning, it felt like a whole new world we had to figure out. One awkward and sometimes dangerous step at a time. It wasn't just the streets we couldn't figure out. It was the whole new world we were trying to navigate. On another occasion, I took the bus, hoping to catch a connection at the right stop. But without knowing where to get off, I ended up far from where I needed to be, in a place I didn't recognize. These are the kinds of struggles that happen to refugees and immigrants more often than people realize. And yet, we don't always share these stories, sometimes out of fear of being made fun of, or because we believe no one will care. So we bury them deep inside, carrying the weight of these small yet significant challenges alone. But I know we aren't the only ones. Many other refugees have likely faced the same frustration and confusion while trying to adjust to a new place, where everything, right down to public transportation, feels like an insurmountable challenge. While everyone has their struggles, whether it's finding childcare, caring for an elderly loved one, or juggling personal and professional commitments, refugees and immigrants have this added layer of obstacles to contend with. The simplest thing, like getting from point A to point B, can become overwhelming tasks. We are not just learning how to survive in a new country. We're constantly battling a sense of unfamiliarity in every aspect of our lives. It's this bonus challenge that makes the refugee experience so different from the average struggle. And while it often goes unseen, it's something that many of us carry quietly, all the while trying to adapt and build a new life. The stress of navigating all of this can be overwhelming. And it wasn't just the practical challenges. There was an emotional toll, one that weighed heavily as the initial excitement wore off and reality set in. There was no one to lean on, no one who could truly understand what we were going through. The unfamiliarity became isolating. That loneliness was compounded by the fact that some people in the community didn't welcome us with open arms. Instead, they viewed us with suspicion. They would ask questions such as, "When are you going back to your country?" Simply because we were different, because we were newcomers in their space. The stress of adjusting to a new life was already hard, but the pressure from those who didn't want us there multiplied it tenfold. You carry not just the weight of your own struggles, but also the burden of being misunderstood and unwelcome. It's a deeply unsettling feeling to escape one kind of danger, only to encounter another, a quieter, subtler kind of rejection, but one that cuts just as deep. This is the experience of many refugees and immigrants, and it's not often understood. People see the outward journey, the move from one country to another. But what they don't see is the emotional and psychological toll that displacement takes. The trauma we carry doesn't disappear when we cross borders. It lingers, echoing in unexpected moments, like when fireworks remind you of bombs. What I've learned is that resettlement is more than just finding a new place to live. It's about learning to navigate a world that doesn't always understand you, while you try to make sense of it. It's about managing the trauma of your past, while facing the challenges of your present. And it's about finding a way to build a new life, even when you feel out of place. For those of us who have lived through war, political persecution, and displacement, the journey doesn't end when we arrive in a new country. It's just the beginning of another chapter, one filled with its own battles, some internal, some external. And while these battles are different from the ones we left behind, they are no less challenging. To those who have never experienced the trauma of war or persecution that leads to displacement, it can be difficult to understand what goes on inside the hearts and minds of those who have. The struggles refugees and immigrants face aren't just external. They carry a deep emotional weight that colors every aspect of their lives in a new country. My hope is to offer a glimpse into the challenges these individuals endure, and perhaps it will give you a different perspective. Rather than seeing refugees and immigrants as burdens or outsiders, I hope you'll see resilience behind their struggles and the courage it takes to rebuild a life from scratch in a foreign land. Instead of judging them for their differences or struggles, you might be moved to greater understanding. Instead of maligning them, perhaps compassion will take root. Together, through empathy and solidarity, we can work toward making the world a better place for everyone, regardless of where we've come from or the hardships we've faced. Thank you.